you need to stay focused on what you want. And even though other good things come your way, like you don't really need to compromise and take and say yes to everything. I definitely like to say yes to a lot of things, but it was so important to learn to stay focused on what it is that I wanted, what it is that I was working for.
Hello and welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, your host and companion on this incredible journey of career transformation. Get ready for inspiring stories, valuable insights, and a roadmap to shift your mindset towards a more fulfilling professional life. In each episode, we explore the remarkable journeys of individuals who made the leap from one career to another. As we navigate through these stories together, you'll find motivation, strategies, and the confidence to pursue your dreams. Whether you're feeling stuck, contemplating a change, or just seeking a dose of inspiration, this podcast is your weekly companion. Tune in every Thursday as we uncover the secrets to shifting your day job. I'm Brittany Cates, and I'm here to guide you on your path to a more fulfilling career. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Cates, and I'm so glad that you've joined me today. Today, I am sharing a conversation I had with Evelyn Haupt. She is an acquaintance of mine who I met when I was working through the program where I cultivated my UX design skills. And during that time, she reached out to me, she networked, and said she was interested in learning more about the program. So we met up for breakfast one morning and I was able to answer her questions, and that allowed her to determine if it was a good path for her. And it's just kind of cool to look back and think that I had a hand in helping her figure out her next career move and bring some clarity into the picture to help her transition into the UX design world. So now she is working full-time in a design role and thriving, and I'm honored to be a part of her story as well as have the opportunity to share it with you today. So please welcome Evelyn to the podcast.
Hi, Evelyn. Welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. How are you? Doing great. Thank you. You have a cute little kitty running around. So no worries. Yeah. He likes attention. And people always talk about how cats are a little bit more independent than puppies, but as you'll see, pets and attention. So yeah, no worries. Anyway, Evelyn, thanks for being willing to come on and share your story. Evelyn and I met a few years back when I was doing the You Are Techie program with Ellen Toomey, and Evelyn was wanting to make a change and she was asking me about the program. And so that's how we connected. And now Evelyn has like totally made a 180 in her career, and we're going to hear all about it. So if you wouldn't mind starting with what were you doing and how did it evolve into where you are now? Yeah. Meeting you was such a great highlight of that time. So I'm so happy to continue this connection. So at my career, I guess, a little brief overview, I graduated with an illustration degree 10 years ago now. It's so crazy. And I freelanced for a while. I had a small child at the time, so she's bigger now, but I stayed home and freelanced with her until she was about 5. And from there, she started school full time, and I was like, okay, I think I want to get back in the workforce and talk to people my age. I feel motherhood at that time was pretty isolating for me. None of my friends were having kids and none of my siblings had kids. And I definitely was looking for more of a support system, a different connection, and feeling like just wanting a change and wanting to feel valued in a different way. So it was an interesting experience for me because I thought I would be a stay-at-home mom my whole life, and things didn't turn out that way. And I love where I'm at right now. And it has been super great. So I went to the workforce, started in sales. So started in Nordstrom, actually, which is a great place to start any career. I think you learn so many things about talking to people and customer service and how to solve people's problems, which is an interesting skill in the sales environment. But I was working more in like the high-end section with more business people who were looking for very specific things. And so that was an interesting space to be. And from there, I went into high-end appliance sales and was there for another 4 years. And again, like a high-end environment with people with very specific needs and needing professionals that had in-depth knowledge, the products and everything. Was really happy there, grew a lot. I think sales is pretty grinding, and you develop a lot of this like presentation skills and talking to people. So I'm really happy with those experiences. But then 2020 hit, and we all had some moment of introspection, I think, that year. So mine went with like, all right, like I've been working now for 5 years. Is the trajectory where I want it to be? And really just like big picture, what do I want from my life? And what do I want for my family? And so we did a little family like mental exercise where we just wrote down, if money wasn't an issue in our lives, what would we be doing? How would we fill our time? What would we do? And I wrote my list, just like the first things that came to my mind, and none of it had to do with an art career, which I was still pursuing, and it didn't have anything to do with like the sales environment either. And so I was like, oh, this is an interesting turn of events, that like what I really want when it comes down to it is things like travel and being able to afford extracurricular activities for my child, anything that she wants to do in school or like things like that. I want to be able to pay for that, eat well, invest in fitness, dance, all these things. And so I sat down and I was like, okay, what things in my career would help me get there? And if my current career isn't helping me in that way, like which ones will? I actually was like in the branch of, do I become a teacher and get summers off and do all those things? Or do I go into tech, and that has a reputation for being able to jump around, increase your salary in different areas and things like that. So ultimately, obviously, I went that direction.
Amazing. I love that your family like sat down and what would you call it? You had a family meeting or whatever you call it and decided to talk about like your goals for you individually, right? And probably as a whole.
Yeah.
And what prompted that? Do you even
Uh,
remember?
Yeah, we were living downtown Salt Lake City at the time. And when 2020 hit, we weren't going outside or anything, and we were in a small-ish apartment. It wasn't like tiny, but apartments, you share the space. And so I feel like it came out of this like early COVID times where you're getting antsy and watching the world go by outside your window and doing a lot of thinking and spending time with each other and talking about things that you might not be in the rush of every day outside of that time. So
Yeah.
uh, it was great.
Yeah. So just like the opportunity to slow down made you start talking
Absolutely.
about things maybe that you've been thinking about for a while, but just didn't seem to have the time to.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We were like, I was feeling like I wanted a change in my career, but I didn't know what it was. And sitting down and reflecting in that way helped me put those thoughts into a more concrete, like a list. I love lists. So never thought of putting my life and my long-term goals into a list like that. So it was very clarifying.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you tell me, like, how did you know that tech was like an option, or what background did you have that helped inform you? Oh, I know that it's flexible or there's room for growth or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great question because I have some relatives that work like tech adjacent, but I didn't have a ton of experience in the field itself or had anyone close to me that worked there. But I feel like it was just like people talk about it, TV shows. In Salt Lake, there's that a little bit of a tech hub where there are a lot of businesses and buildings in a specific area that you drive by and you're like, oh, I wonder what happens there. And they all have a similar look where it's a big shiny building with a nice logo. And so I think its reputation of like tech jobs being what they were is initially what drew me in. And I started with just like a free boot camp to learn how to code. And I didn't know UX was a thing at the time. And so I went through like the coding basics and learned a little bit HTML and CSS. And then at the end of it, there was like a little quiz that was like, what kind of tech person are you? And so I took it. And with my art degree background and interests in visual arts, yeah, UX kind of popped up as like you would be a great UX. I was like, what is? And so I did more research and I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Little blend of like visual art, but also data and researching and talking to people, all my favorite things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I had a similar experience.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't a quiz, but my friend who is a developer was like, we were talking about things and she goes, there's this like thing called, she actually mentioned UI design. She's like, I think you might like it. And so she described what she understood it to be. And then I did more research and I was like, this is cool because, again, it marries my artistic, creative side and then my logical, trying to make sense of things, creating like order that I felt was a strength of mine as well, having been a professional for so many years and having had some other experiences where I used that skill. So similar,
Yeah.
kind of discovery and like excitement about it. So that's really cool. So once you found out about UX design, what was your next step? What did you do next?
Oh man. Okay. So the program that I was with, it was called Skill Crush. And so they had a free boot camp. And then after the free boot camp, you could elect into some of their like courses. And so I went ahead and upgraded to the UX add-on course. And so I started taking all those super basic classes like color theory and wireframing and layout. And I really liked it. And I flew through the courses and I was like, this is totally my jam. Like
Yeah.
I worked a lot with Photoshop previously. The tooling was really familiar to me. And then obviously like the UI, the colors and all of that, I had an extensive background in. And the organizing of information, like you were talking about, was new to me, but really fun. So I did that and I finished that course. That one took a little bit longer because it's a little bit more work intensive to create a website and all of that stuff, but it was really great. So that's what got me started down that path. And yeah, then we can talk about from there, like after completing the course, the next steps were a little fuzzier and not as linear to like
Yeah.
from boot camp to job.
Yeah. Yeah. At what point so you finished the course and were you like, oh, I can find a job now? Or were you like, no, I don't know what to do, like next? Or
Yeah.
what did that look like for you?
I feel like at this point throughout the course, I was feeling lots of confidence. I was like, this is coming so easily. I can't believe I didn't know about this. This is so fun. But after finishing, then you start looking around and that's when it goes up and down where I'm like, I have the skill set and I have this sales background. I feel like I could be a good fit for a lot of different things, but how do you find them? Where are these people? You applying to jobs willy-nilly isn't always a successful strategy. And so that's where it was more challenging, just like knowing that I had the skills to do this, but how do you present them? Where do you usually a job will be like you knew someone or there was a connection, and I didn't have any of those connections. But I started applying and things like that and not getting very far just because you don't have a lot of experience. And then putting together a portfolio is was daunting, kind of choosing like personal projects since you don't have experience. You put in personal projects, but understanding what those could look like and what it is that people are actually looking for in a portfolio versus just looking at other people's and going off of theirs is helpful, but I needed more context. I feel like I did a lot of research. I started going to lots of different networking things. Utah does do networking quite well, I will say. I've since moved out of the state and it's not quite as there's not quite as much going on, even though I feel like I'm in a bigger metropolitan. But this like community in Utah was really cool because there was quite a lot of meetups and networks and different ladies who UX and other societies that got together quite often. So I started going to a few of those and talking to a lot of people.
But yeah, I think after a little while, I also started listening to podcasts. And I had 3 that I would listen to, Design Much with a couple local UXers. At the time it was going, I think they ended it now, but it was a really good podcast just for me personally to know what people are talking about in the industry at this moment in time was a big deal to me because I feel like LinkedIn is helpful, but it was very big, like lots of conversations. Whereas local podcasts help me dial in. This is how people are talking about UX. This is what the topics are. And that's how I found Ellen's podcast, which was also really helpful, geared towards like women making career transitions. And from there, I did all the things that she recommended. Building up a community, building your portfolio were the 2 main things, and I was like, "This makes sense to me." So I started working really hard and putting in the time, and then I met with you because I realized that she had a one-on-one mentorship program, and I felt a little stuck and feeling like I wasn't getting the traction that I wanted, and so I was like, "Maybe there is some additional support needed." So I met with you and talked about your experience working with that You're a Techie program and ended up doing a one-on-one career mentorship with her, and that was a great experience.
I love the examples of how you sought out resources to educate yourself and like how there were a lot of like free opportunities, right? We talk about podcasts, there's so many out there, finding ones that resonate with you, or you said it was a group of local people that were doing this podcast. And so that is probably what drew you to that one in particular. And then also the networking pieces. Was there any like hesitation about going to events, like, to network?
Yes, I feel like I grew up being an introvert, but because of my career choices, being in sales and stuff, I started to realize I really do enjoy talking to people and going to events and things. And so it wasn't new, but because it was a new space, it was a little more nerve-wracking. But people are really awesome. And this community especially is always looking to connect. A lot of us work remotely, and so that was also a plus. But yeah, a little nerve-wracking to attend events on your own, but once you get going and just put on your fun clothes and go meet people, it was always a good time.
One of my previous guests was saying, like, she found that the UX design community was really, like, welcoming and helpful, and even though she was new to the industry, she felt like there was a lot of love, and so it helped her
Yeah.
nerves
No, I
with
definitely feel the same
networking.
way, and I think that even just the positive response that I would get reaching out to people online, just like cold messaging them on LinkedIn, just even the kind responses I would get there, it really was like an affirmation of this is a space that I do want to be in. This a lot of these people are so willing to help, share resources, talk you through issues and questions, and there's tons of mentorship programs set up through like independent communities, and people were so willing to help, and that was for me knowing that I was coming into an industry that generally wants to be helpful to each other was a huge plus, and like I said, reaffirming in my career choice.
Yeah, I just had a question. 1 second. So, this whole time that you were learning UX and doing the boot camp and networking, were you still doing your previous job?
I
Can you
was.
talk a little bit about that
Yeah, that
experience?
was some long nights. Yes, I was working full time. I had a school-age child. We bought a house a little bit into that career journey. So there was a lot going on, and I feel like I didn't get any fun evenings watching movies or anything for a year and a half or something, just because I'd finish work, have dinner, put the kid to bed, go do my boot camp, or go do my working on the portfolio or seeing what was coming up. And yeah, lots of lots of work. And I talk to a lot of people, and I feel like I always say you can. I feel like anybody who wants to be in UX can do it, but it is a lot of work to get in. So there is definitely, and I feel like people would say this to me as well when I was networking, that once you get in, then the climb is easy. Like you can do a lot within the industry once you get in, but it is a steep little hurdle to learn the skills from scratch and then to get in the door. So that was a little frustrating to hear at that time, where it was like, I have everything, but getting in was a little tricky, and it did take time, and it did take a lot of effort, especially the networking part. It takes a long time.
Yeah. So what was it that made you decide that you were ready to have more support in your career change journey?
Yeah, great question. It had been, I can't remember exactly how much time had lapsed between me completing my course and putting together a portfolio, and then finding Ellen's podcast and doing that networking and portfolio build. It had been months. And so I felt I should be getting different results, because in the past, when I had applied to jobs or different things like that, I would have made the change by now. And I felt like I was putting in a lot of time and effort and realizing I'm still not where I wanted to be. It was a hard decision because it's just more time and more money to go that route. So it wasn't an easy decision, but I talked to you and that was really insightful. And I emailed Ellen actually, and we talked a little bit about her one-on-one mentorship versus the program, because she had both at the time.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I just woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to spend the extra money to see if this can help. And if it does, it'll be totally worth it. But it was definitely a bit of a leap of faith to do it that way. But I'm so glad I did. I feel like we talked a little bit about this before we started, but that mind shift change, I realize now looking back that the growth mindset to make your career goals happen, I feel like it takes some people a little bit more work and support than others. And I was definitely one of those people that I had put in this work by myself and a lot of hours. And I feel like it was really good work. But overcoming these mental challenges of self-doubt and, like I said, having the right perspective to make your career goals come true, I did need a little extra support in figuring out what I can do to change that mindset. And that's where I feel like Ellen was super, super helpful in providing tools that I didn't know I needed to make that mind shift happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you, what do you think it was about that program? Or can you talk maybe a little bit more about? So obviously it was mindset, right? That was the game changer.
Mm-hmm.
What was the change that you saw in yourself as you continued to, because you were doing all the right things, right? Like you could check them all off the list. Like, I'm doing this. And of course, like any natural human being, you would probably getting frustrated because you're doing all the right things, right? So what was it about the mindset piece that helped shift your trajectory and like that you felt made a difference?
Yeah, it was an interesting and difficult journey, to say, of growth. But I feel like the main thing that was holding me back that I didn't really know does come back to this self-confidence. And that affects how you present yourself to others, how you approach problems, especially in a group setting, and how you speak about yourself and others and the problem is all comes back to how you view yourself and the trust that you have in yourself. And I think that piece I hadn't really had the tools to really work on. And this space really gave me the opportunity to do that. Some of the things that she helped with as part of her program was asking questions like, why do you deserve this change? Like, why do you deserve to get your dream? And it is great to be able to step back and objectively look at yourself as a person. And I think having a career coach or some sort of mentor or even a therapist, someone who's observing you and the type of human you are and being able to see your strengths and your weaknesses in a very objective way can really help, I think, to just see yourself as like an actual successful, super valuable, super smart person. And she gave me a lot of tools to be able to do that. Some of the ones that worked for me were things like keeping a list of things that you have done in the past. Like, what challenges have you overcome that prove that you're able to overcome this one? And that was really helpful to be like, oh my gosh, look at all these things that I've done in the past that are hard things to do. You totally have what it takes to do this particular thing. Keeping a journal of wins, which is a little bit different, more specifically with UX and other little things. And even like personal wins in your life with I talked to someone today or like in customer service or did a thing that was really difficult. That always counted as well and was really helpful, I think, to just everything is connected. And I think that understanding that I was building these skills, but I wasn't really internalizing myself as a skilled person in this space. Connecting those things was difficult for me, and she really helped me be able to do that. And I think that was a big turning point, like I said, in the way that I just approached the field and my career in general.
Yeah. I love that. Everything is connected. And I know that sometimes we can come up with all sorts of excuses. And one of the ones I've heard is, I've put all this time and effort into this career or this education, and am I just throwing it away? And it really is no, you're not
Opposite,
throwing it
right?
away. Like,
Uh,
everything is connected, and your strengths can be leveraged in different ways depending on whatever role you take on. And so embracing like what you have to offer, recognizing it, embracing it, being confident in it. And I would say that I had a similar experience. The exercise you mentioned, the first one about what have you done so far to get you here where you are today, that was the one that really stood out for me as well, helping me realize like how capable I am and
almost
I
like
can do
we
hard
prove
things.
to prove to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Do these hard things.
And it's interesting because your brain looks for evidence to support whatever it is you're looking for. And I think because instinctively we notice the negative before the positive, right? When you've lived that way for so long, like it sounds so simple, right? Absolutely. Let's look at what you have done rather than what you haven't done. But it really makes a huge difference because now you're looking for those things and then you can really appreciate it yourself more.
Absolutely. It's like creating a new little walkway in your brain, right? You've made this little path for yourself, but now it's time to go this way and grow a little bit more. But sometimes you need a little help, like carving out that path. And so for me, that was really helpful in having someone be like, you've already done all these things. Like you can talk about it. You should be confident in being able to address these challenges because you've already done it.
Yeah. It's amazing how having someone on the outside looking in, you can't read the label inside the jar concept. And that's us, right? We're in the jar. And so having someone outside saying, no, I see this and this, like you said, objectively being able to see you for all that you are and have done and helping you then now see it yourself. Yeah, it's so valuable. And I think it's a lesson in we can't do this journey alone, right? Anything in life, like as human beings, we're meant to be in community and we're meant to be in partnership to help us in the learning and growing process.
Yeah. Yeah. And having a career coach was never something I had considered up until this time. And it was always interesting to talk to people because I'd be like, what is that about? Like, what is that going to do? And it was always like, I don't know, but I feel a lot better about myself as a person. And I would always say, it'll be worth it if I do come out of this with a job. And eventually I had to be like, okay, but what if I don't? Like, what if our sessions end and I still don't have a job? How do I deal with that? And so I made a little game plan and it was great, but it did actually end up working out where I got a job offer before our coaching sessions ended. So it was a happy ending in all the right ways.
Yeah, that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about that experience, getting the job offer, and then what have you been doing since?
Yeah. As I was thinking about the questions that you sent over, one of them was a tough moment in the transition and how you stayed resilient through that. And so it comes to mind around this time, I had been working with our career coach, Ellen, and I was doing all the things. And I ended up getting, a job opportunity in the same industry that I was in at the time the transition was elsewhere, but And I was like, it was a pay upgrade and seemed like it was going to be a great move. And because I hadn't had anything happen inside the tech industry, I was really considering maybe I just make this change while I'm working towards tech. And I feel like it was just out of like being tired of effort. And I was like, okay, somebody wants me to come work with them. And anyways, I was like, maybe I should just do it and deal with it. But I talked to Ellen and she was like, let's remember what your dream job is. Is this your dream job description? And it wasn't. It was close-ish, but it wasn't. And it wasn't going to take me where I wanted to go. And that was hard to be like, okay, yes. But it did, help me understand that like you need to stay focused on what you want. And even though other good things come your way, like you don't really need to compromise and take and say yes to everything. I definitely like to say yes to a lot of things, but it was so important to learn to stay focused on what it is that I wanted, what it is that I was working for. And so that was tough. But I did end up passing on that job opportunity and then continuing interviewing. And I got connected with this person at where I am now who was actively looking for a designer and was interviewing others. And it just ended up working out. And at the time that I interviewed at this where I'm at now, I did also was coming off of a couple other interviews. So after I said no to this one, I got 2 or 3 different interviews at other places. And so I was able to compare not necessarily job offers, but even just like the vibe of the different places and, be able, it was great. It was so crazy. Like after saying no, that all of a sudden it was like, now there's all these other opportunities that are more aligned with where I want to be. And I get to now almost interview them and see who is going to be the best fit. So it was fantastic.
Yeah. I love that. This idea that we're going, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is going to throw something your way. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to do that? Like, you right? Like, you're always going to get tested in some way. And as soon as you say, yeah, I'm sure, and I'm not going to take that job, then it's okay. I was just like, sure, here you go.
Yeah. And it truly was a kind of a great result of all the work that I had put in. Obviously, at the time, I still needed someone to be like, but is it what you want?
Yeah.
But I think because of the work we already had put in, I was able to be like, no, it's not. And I still want this other thing. So that was a real growth moment.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as it takes you back to in the beginning of the program, she has us do the exercise of writing down your ideal job description, and there's no limit, right? Don't hold back. What do
Didn't
you
that
really
blow
want?
your mind?
Yeah.
Wait, are we being realistic or? And she's like, no, because that is just you're going to put limits on yourself that you shouldn't even be there. And that broke my brain.
Yeah, because we're conditioned to do that, right? Oh, be practical, be realistic. And yeah, so for someone to give you permission to start thinking big, it's a little bit of a shock to the system for sure. And so having done that activity, you had something to reference. Like when it came down to I have this opportunity, now you can go back and look and say, does it match? And in the places where it doesn't, do I want to compromise that? Or am I going to wait for the thing? And it's going to be different for everybody, right? Like different situations, whatever, different needs at the time, like in your whatever time you're at in your life. Like you still had a job that was supporting you and your family. It wasn't a do or die. It would be nice to make a little more money, but I can stick it out a little bit
Sometimes it felt like
longer.
do or die.
I know,
No,
right?
there's up and downs in every job that you work with. And sometimes I was like, I just want the change right now. But luckily, I guess for me, I was able to have that freedom of choice because I was working and still being able to get that income that we needed. It was hard though.
Yeah.
It's almost like working 2 jobs at that
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And
job searching is like a whole part-time job.
yeah, when it comes to setting a goal for yourself, there are sacrifices that have to be made, and you have to decide, okay, I want this, but what does that mean to get there? And then am I willing to take on all of those things?
Yeah.
And if you're not, then it's going to be
Yeah.
harder to maintain.
And I think coming into tech, that list of how do I get there, I didn't know what that was. And so I feel like I was a little bit naive in coming in
Yeah.
and then suddenly realizing, how much work it is. But glad that it happened that way because I might have backed out of it and been like, that 2 years to make the full change seems like a long time. Obviously, looking back now, it's like totally happy. We're so happy working remote. We were able to move to where we wanted to for a long time. And like all these wonderful things have come of it. But if I had known how much work it would have been, I might have gotten nervous, maybe too scared to do it because I hadn't put in the work to be confident enough to make that change. But it is. And I think those steps, like having a mentor and a career coach, helped me really clarify what those steps would be. But I feel like since then, I've been able to connect with a lot more people on a more, like on a pretty personal level that work in this space. And I feel like if you have those connections, that is not everybody has to go through a career coach to find success, right? It's just one of the ways that might be a good fit for you. But even just having a friend that does the same thing that you do can really offer a lot of clarity into what it's like, how they got in there, what the industry is like. And so I feel like networking and mentorship, people always talk about that. And I hit it really hard. But I feel like what I learned is that you don't need to have 15 people that you're constantly talking to. It's more important to just have a couple people that you really connect with, like maybe one that is more in a professional sense and one that's more of commiserating, like on your level. I think having one in each kind of space is plenty because connecting with people takes a lot of time and energy, and keeping up relationships is pretty difficult. I think in this fast-paced world, I feel like that is something that I learned and have taken away, is that just having one or two people that you really connect with and can ask a question to at any time is just as valuable as any of these other things.
Yes. Thank you for that reminder, because it makes me think of being in Ellen's program. There's the career coach that is helping you with the mindset piece and moving up a level or whatever. But then you also have the other women that are in the program that are doing what you're doing, right? And even just connecting with one of them and having that back and forth and that ability to, like you said, commiserate or like share challenges so you don't feel alone. Yeah, it's so valuable. And then those friendships like last for far beyond because you were going through the same thing at the same time and were
Yeah,
there for each other.
I didn't do the whole community program that Ellen provided. I was doing my own networking, and at the time I was like, this is plenty. I just want the one-on-one attention.
Yeah.
So, I didn't have that built-in opportunity to connect with someone on my level. But what I did do is, back when I had the energy and was like doing all this networking stuff, I looked for companies that I thought were great places to work with, and then would look at who works there on LinkedIn, and then just see which ones stood out to me or which ones I felt like I could relate to, and then message them. And one of these people ended up being a really close friend. She ended up living in Utah, and it was crazy at the time because we were both there. And she had worked in Portland, the Portland area where I am now. So it was such an interesting, it ended up that we still talk, and she's since moved on to she lives in New York now and works at a different place. And we still just call each other and talk about UX, and we're friends. And yeah, there's a lot of ways to meet people, but it takes effort and it takes time.
Yeah.
That's my one commiserating friend, and she is significant. I feel like her UX career is like up here and I'm just starting. And so that's also really nice, where it's like, oh my gosh, like this is really hard. And she's, oh yeah, it is. she always like validates, and then and this is how I did it.
Mm, nice. I love that. Yeah, it's amazing the people that you can connect with because you have something in common, right? You were saying you can read people's profiles, their backgrounds, and say, oh, we have this in common. Let me reach out to them, right? Because that's all you really need to start. And then just amazing how you can connect with somebody. And
Yeah, I
they
bring
never
it
know.
up just because I feel like that can be a hurdle for a lot of people. The networking piece
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
difficult, especially if you're not used to just like showing up to an event by yourself, which I feel like isn't natural for anyone. So that's why I bring up you can go meet people, which is great, but you can also do it online. There's so many more ways to do it now, and they're all valid.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. I love hearing about that, how that relationship came about. It's really cool. So I feel like we've talked about a lot of the questions just like organically, which is great. So as we close, do you have any advice for those who are actively seeking a career change, feel like they're doing all the right things, and just feeling a little bit discouraged? What kind of advice might you give them?
Um, I would say be patient with yourself. Is I feel like one of the biggest things. It is exhausting to be in this transition space, and it is difficult. And so I would definitely say give yourself some grace, take a little bit of time to take a deep breath. And for me, reminding myself of the hard things you've already done is huge. And then it's okay to just take a break and go on a walk when you need to. If you're working on a hard problem and it's too much, like it's okay to take a little bit of a break. But the other thing that I feel like does lift my spirits a little bit is even just attending like local online events. I like maybe not local is the right word, but the Figma event that's coming up, the config that they do every year. I did that last year, and it's free if you do it virtually, which is great. But it is so heartening, I think, to just see how big of a community it really is. Like you get to, even if you're not there in person, there's so many people, so many speakers, and they all have such a passion for what they do. And that to me is a really inspiring thing that has helped me continue this journey and continue wanting to grow and learn and meet new people. Because there's even sometimes they do fun little events like a design battle or something. And even just seeing how other people design in this like kind of silly space can be really exciting for me. Continuing to be inspired by other designers and however way you want to do that, whether it's going to live events or tuning into others, is really great. And yeah, giving yourself a little bit of a grace, I think is really important. And then yeah, finding your people, somebody that you can lean on, whether or not they are in the tech industry, just having a support team that believes in you and where you can just be like, be reminded of what great person you are. So,
Thank you. Thanks for that advice. I think that is, I love this idea of finding inspiration from other people that are doing what you want to do and being able to see that it is possible for you as well. And just keep going and doing the next right step.
yeah, yeah, the crazy time to be in UX. So,
Yeah.
uh, definitely commend anyone who is making the jump into it. It's a fun place to be, and it's also a tough place to be making that transition. But I'm happy to connect with anyone and chat through anything. I know it can be rough, but it's fun here. So if you want to do it, go for it.
Thanks. If anybody does want to reach out, they can just find you on LinkedIn, I take it.
Yes, that is the best place to do it. Just message me and connect, and let's be friends.
Yeah. Awesome. Evelyn, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure catching up and hearing your story in more detail. So I
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks
your
for
time.
having me. It's great to chat.
I want to thank Evelyn for joining me today. It was so good to catch up and to hear more details about her career transition and how she's so happy and feels so aligned with what it is she is doing in her career. If you are interested in gaining more career clarity or having some guidance and accountability on your career change journey, I do offer one-on-one coaching services. Please reach out to me via email or DM me on Instagram. And I would love to share with you my dream career strategy that I use to help my clients move toward a more fulfilling career. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please leave a review for the podcast. The more reviews we get, the more reach the podcast has, and it just helps people find it. And if you don't leave a review, maybe just share the podcast with a friend who you think might benefit from these types of conversations. Again, thank you for being here today. I'm your host, Brittany Cates, and together, let's shift your day job.